All right, so people can hear me now.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to start the webinar. My name's Lucinda Shannon, and I'm a Transportation Planning Manager with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping notes and then introduce tonight's workshop. So we will be recording this webinar, including any typed correspondence in the question and answer field. All participants are automatically muted. You will have two ways to ask questions or raise points for discussion during the presentation. You can use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen to type a question. Moderators will monitor this screen and respond either live by responding to your question as part of the presentation or by typing a written response to your question. If you would like to speak to the group, please use the raise your hand feature also located at the bottom of your screen. The facilitator will unmute you when we are ready for you to ask your question. Make sure that you are unmuted on your computer. This feature is located at the bottom of your screen and it looks like a big microphone. If there is a red diagonal line through it, you are on mute on your computer. Click on that once to make sure you are unmuted on your local computer. If you don't see the raise your hand and the mute feature, move your mouse over your screen and it'll pop up at the bottom. Tonight's workshop will cover the projects being considered for submission by the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission and the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization for selecting projects for funding. In the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization area, we have 16 proposal slots. The TJPDC, the MPO, the City of Charlottesville, and the Albemarle County each have 4 slots. The final applications will be submitted between June 1st and August 3rd. There's approximately $20 million available for projects in the Culpeper District. There's also an additional $500 million in the State Highway Priority Fund that's competed with statewide. Tonight we have Chuck Proctor, VDOT Planning Manager for the Culpeper District, and Jessica Hirsch Ballering, Transportation Planner with the TJPDC. They will go over the proposed projects and answer questions. Nick Morrison is also here. He's a Transportation Planning Manager with the TJPDC and is helping manage the slides and webinar room. Tonight we will cover the TJPDC and MPO projects, and tomorrow we will cover the City of Charlottesville and the Albemarle County projects. Each project will be introduced and then we will open the floor for questions from the public. Please note, the cost estimates on the website are preliminary and subject to change. We will be accepting your comments through the website and email until the end of May. We hope you to use our time here tonight to answer questions to help gain a better understanding of each project and ask that you submit your comments and opinions on the projects via the website or email after the webinar. Some of the projects we may sail right through and others will take more time. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Chuck Proctor, our VDOT Planning Manager.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you all could participate in this meeting. Hopefully we'll be able to go through this and shed some light on these projects and answer some questions for you. Let's see. Nick, are you going to run the controls?
Yeah, if you just tell me when to advance the slides, I'll do that for you. So
yeah, like you said, this slide you can see where the Albemarle County, the MPO area is for the Charlottesville Albemarle area, as well as the TJPDC, which covers the surrounding rural counties and the rural parts of Albemarle County. All right. Go ahead, next slide.
Do you see it, Chuck?
Not yet. There it is. Okay, this is the first project. This is a resubmission from last year, our last round of Smart Scale. It's for the conversion of the interchange at Fontaine Avenue and 29 bypass to a divergent diamond interchange, which basically would allow for a better operation of that interchange, and it would also accommodate the northbound left turn movement that's currently a yield condition at 64, it's caused a lot of recent crashes in recent years. It would allow that movement to be eliminated and routed through this interchange. We're looking at this concept right now, and we may make some modifications to it. The district L&D and traffic engineering section are doing some additional work on this project, and we're going to try to reduce some of the costs so that it can be more competitive. It'll be slightly different than what you're seeing on the original concept, but the price is probably still going to be around the same, about $18 to $20 million. Once we finalize the concept, we will validate and update the cost estimate to reflect the new cost. The project also includes the extension of the shared use path from through the interchange, which currently basically stops at the northbound off-ramp right there in front of the UVA Fontaine Research Park. The next project is the, you can see the trail running through the middle of the median right there. And we will extend it through the interchange. We're trying to work the logistics on that now. And we will come back with the final concept probably in the next several weeks. Is there any questions on this one?
So we'll open the floor to questions. If you want to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature or type it in the question and answer chat on the screen. Somebody has their hand, it's Anne. Anne, you're unmuted, please go ahead.
Thank you. So Chuck, I missed when you said, what is the timetable for the cost of the various elements of this project going to be available? So, I mean, how much?
Once we finalize the concept, I guess the question was, when will the cost be available?
Yes.
Once we finalize the concept, we will validate the cost and have that available probably sometime in June.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, we're gonna move ahead to the next project.
Lucinda?
Yes.
There was a question in the Q&A.
Okay.
Will Cockrell ask which exits will be closed?
Chuck, do you know which exits?
It's the northbound to westbound on-ramp. So northbound 29 to westbound 64. Right now, it's a left turn lane that crosses the southbound traffic. That ramp will be, left turn lane will be closed, and that ramp will be volume will be relocated through the interchange. They can just come down and U-turn at the interchange and go up and right up onto the ramp onto 64 without having to conflict with the southbound movement, which is a very heavy movement coming out of Charlottesville.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. So we'll move on to the next project. Chuck.
All right. One of the projects that was part of the Hydrolic 29 panel study that went on, the Hillsdale Extended South project. We came up with some concepts, and this was one of the ones that they wanted to see how well it would compete. And it would extend Hillsdale from the current intersection at Hydrolic down to tie in with the 250 interchange, 250 Route 250, and it would relocate the westbound ramps to this connection point. It would also include some improvements on Holiday and the addition of a acceleration lane. Well, would reconfigure the 29 lanes through that to allow for a right turn free flow lane for the traffic coming off of 250 to basically make that right on the 29 without having to stop. It also provided some other connections to the back of Kroger's and to the back of, forget the one property there. It did go through one parcel right there at the end of the street, a Holiday on the north side. But we tried to keep the impacts to a minimum as much as possible.
Thanks, Chuck. So we're going to open it up to questions. If anybody has a question, please use the raise your hand feature or type it in the Q&A field. So we have 2 questions. Does this project make the hydraulic, the 250 hydraulic right in, right out only? The image does not look like it.
Yeah, it's a
Chuck?
right in off of 250. It's a right in off of 250 westbound and right in and out off of 250. So it is directional. It doesn't go to the eastbound side. It's just exclusively for the westbound movements on 250.
Okay, thanks. And then Peter Olms has a question. Is the intent to extend bike ped facilities south past Holiday Drive to the existing sidewalk path adjacent to 250? It's hard to tell from the image.
I think we did include that, sidewalks along that route all the way to Holiday, and we would tie in with the connections, the facilities that are there at the hotel and at the business office that's there on the east side. But we wouldn't go all the way to necessarily to 250.
Okay, and we have a question from Frank Davini. We are unmuting you, Frank, so you can ask your question. Allowed to talk. I guess go ahead. Frank, are you there? We lost him. Unmute.
Now?
Oh, okay. We can hear you now, Frank. Go ahead.
All right. So we're expecting at some point to see a crossover bridge at Angus Road that will allow cyclists to get from that neighborhood there on the west side of 29 over to the 250 commuter bypass trail, using that, maybe using that the sidewalk that Peter just mentioned. So will this project augment that or interfere with that concept in any way?
You mean from Angus over to Holiday?
Yes.
I don't know what that plan looks like. I don't think we would interfere with that. Along Holiday, we'll just have to see what the improvements would need to be for that facility along Holiday.
Okay, well, a lot of people are coming, people are now coming down Angus and crossing over to that median area, going underneath the 250 bridge down to where Bodo's is. And I know
that won't be effective.
I know a lot of people who commute by bicycle from the city out to places to the west of 29. And currently there's not really a very good way to do that. So anything you can do on this project to improve that situation would be useful.
Thank you, Frank. Part of Smart Scale, we get points for adding in bike and pedestrian facilities. So I'm sure this is something that is being considered with this project. We're trying to include those facilities with all of the projects. Sandy, were there any other questions in the Q&A field?
Yeah, 2 just came in. The first one is from Sean Bridge that asked, will northbound 29 traffic going to 250 west getting rerouted to right on Angus, then right on new on ramp?
Yes.
Thanks. And then the second question is from Debbie Luzinski Weber. And I think she asked us to point out where the bike ped facilities are. I don't know if, Nick, do you know where they are? Can you point that out with the mouse? All right, we're gonna give the control over to Chuck, who will be able to use the mouse to point on the slide where the bike ped facilities are. So Chuck, you should have control of the mouse now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it on the sketch. Basically, it runs down the east side of the road all the way to the entrance and just south of the entrance, and it connects to that. The mouse isn't showing up on my end. There it goes. Basically, it's on the east side of the roadway. And there's crosswalks. You can see the crosswalks at the intersection to the west side.
These drawings are
And
very
basically,
preliminary. So
right now they
don't
are.
have-
I mean,
Yeah,
part of what
so-
we're trying to do is get feedback. So if we need to add some additional connections, we can actually do that before the final application is due. So these
Okay.
comments are what we're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. Sandy, are there any other questions?
No, there are no more Q&A. Mr. Deviney, if I said his last name correct, has raised his hand again, though.
Okay. Frank, you should be unmuted. Wait, hold on. Now you should be unmuted. Go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, the other side of Hillsdale, north of Hydrolic Road, has sharrows along the entire length. So this extension of Hillsdale needs to, continue that that theme. We need to have infrastructure for bicyclists along that extension, at least down to Holiday Drive, and probably a little farther, not all the way to the ramps, but just short of the ramps, I would say.
Okay, I'm taking notes.
We
and
will,
think
I know from the road, Holiday North, we didn't actually show the sharrows, but we did show the pedestrian facilities. And we want definitely have a delimiter between where the limited access traffic starts and where the regular traffic ends. So we'll probably look at that intersection as that delimitation point. So you'd basically have to go, instead of following the road further south from Holiday, you'd probably be on some sort of shared use path or some sort of other facility next to the roadway. Wouldn't be part of the roadway though, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. We're gonna move on to the next project, the Hydraulic Road and US 29 project. Chuck?
All right, this is the main project that we, solutions that we came up with for these projects that were submitted last round for the Hydraulic 29 solution project. It includes 5 different segments, improvements, and they're listed on the right. The first one is the main intersection and Hydraulic. We were going to eliminate the left turns from Hydraulic Road onto 29, and those will be relocated either through the parallel facilities or through the roundabout. Angus, we were looking at configuring that as a continuous green T, so it would eliminate the access from the hotel side to the intersection. They would still have a right in, right out, but they wouldn't be able to make the left out. The crosswalks and the pedestrian accommodations that are there now on the south side of the intersection would still work and still be part of the improvement. Zan Road, we basically looked at that as a bike pedestrian crossing with some transit improvements, bus pullouts with transit stops, ADA ramps with an overpass across 29 between just north of Zan Road. The Hydrolic and Hillsdale intersection, we were looking at converting that to a roundabout for two reasons. It would provide better operations than the current intersection there. It would also allow for the U-turning traffic from the left-turning vehicles that would be making the left turns at 29 and Hydrolic to make the right and make the U-turn at the roundabout and then proceed west on Hydrolic. And then the last project is some improvements along Hydrolic between Hillsdale and 250. During the original panel meetings, we had a lot of discussions, and there was a lot of concerns from the citizens that live off of Brandywine and off of Mickey that they couldn't get into the intersection, into the roadway at all. And so this project would basically provide some access improvements for them to actually get into out of those roads onto the main road. We were also looking at possibly including some bike and pedestrian facilities. I know the city had put in a project last round for some improvements along that side of the road, and we were looking at possibly adding some of those facilities back in, but we hadn't really vended all of those improvements yet.
Thanks, Chuck. So we're going to open it up for questions, and Neil Williamson has typed in a question about the cost of the project. If the current cost of these projects totals $19 million, how does the money remaining in the US 29 Solutions Plan enter into this project cost calculus?
It would be $1 million project. The $19 million is the base year cost. The $24.6 million is the future year. That's with risk and contingency and escalation factored in. So that's the difference between those two costs. But we would only be asking for somewhere around $5 or $6 million for this project from Smart Scale.
Thanks, Chuck. And then Darren Pace is asked. Go ahead. So Darren Pace
the only
is
other thing I was
asking
going
if
to
an
say,
overpass. Oh, is Chuck breaking up? Chuck, we can't hear you.
Sorry, you started talking, so I stopped talking.
Oh.
The only other thing I wanted to say is because the MPO is submitting this project, by reducing the cost significantly, when it's scored and when we select it for funding, it could be eligible for, it's only eligible for statewide high priority. However, it would score high enough to get funded in with the district grant pot of money. Since that is the case, it would automatically get funded with high priority funding and not use the district grant funding.
Okay. So then the next question is from Darren Pace, and it is an overpass still an idea being considered for Hydrolic 29?
Not as part of this concept. It's too costly.
Okay. And the next question is from Tim Weber. Is there going to be a plan to allow left turns into the main post office from 29 South?
We weren't looking at that intersection. You're talking about up at the northern end by District Avenue?
Okay, so yeah, this is 29 southbound. 29. So I think that this is not part of the Hydrolic 29 project. So
That
unfortunately,
intersection is offset. That intersection is offset from District Avenue, and that's a T intersection. That's why the left turns aren't allowed at that location. And we weren't proposing to make any changes at that location with this project.
okay, thanks, Chuck. And we're gonna move on to the next project, the 107 Park and Ride lot.
Okay, this was an application from last round. It scored fairly well, but we weren't able to include the transit amenity. I mean, we had it in the concept, but we didn't have transit facilities, so we didn't get the credit for that. Because we have transit going to Crozet now, and it actually goes near this location, we will be able to get that credit for the application, so we feel that it would score much better this round. So, but it's basically the same concept from last round. It's got 2 handicap parking spaces as well as 25 regular spaces. It has the bus turnaround and sidewalks connecting the parking lot to the bus pickup location, and it also has a shelter included. We are making some small modifications to the ramp or the left turn lane out on 250 to accommodate the additional traffic that we would expect would be using this roadway.
Wow, that's really nice. So are there any questions on this project? Is there any in the Q&A? Okay, I'm going to move on, and we can move on to the Route 29 shared use path.
Again, this is another project that was submitted last round of Smart Scale, and it's basically to build a shared use path, 10-foot shared use path from Carsbrook Drive all the way to Seminole Trail, along Seminole Trail all the way to Seminole Lane, which is in the northern shopping center right before you get to the Ravenna River Bridge. And basically, it's going to have the one crossing at Seminole Lane, where at the opposite the Hilton Heights connection, where you're going to have the at-grade crossing, not of 29, but of Seminole Lane. But that's the details of that project. But it will connect, because a lot of the cyclists and stuff, they want to use that connection. There's no way to go north from Carsbrook. You can get to Carsbrook, but you can't get further north from there. So we're hoping to extend this in the future with either by making improvements to the bridge to accommodate future extensions of this trail to connect to the trail that's just north of the bridge on the Ravenna River on 29.
Okay, yeah, and Chuck, that leads into our question from Michael Gazert. Will you be widening the sidewalk across the bridge?
Not with this project.
Okay, and the next question is from Dan Herchert, and it's a comment that will only encourage a dangerous crossing of the Ravenna River absent some sort of bridge. So the bridge is not part of this project. I know we are looking at crossings for it for future projects. And Frank Davini is asking about a cost estimate. The cost estimate for this is $6 million, but these estimates are very much preliminary. The projects are not quite finalized. We're in the rough draft stage, and this is why we're asking for questions at this point and comments. So they will be changing, and the costs will also be changing. But so that's just a rough estimate. So I have Anne has her hand raised. Anne Malik, can you unmute her? We're gonna unmute you, Anne, hold on.
Oh, I've been promoted, yay.
Okay, Anne, we can hear you. Go ahead.
So quick question, with the $6 million price tag, which is apparently 3 million more than was on the list so far, has it been considered that you join up with the pre-existing very nice bike trail, paved separated path on Berkmar? The only thing missing is from Hilton Heights, up the hill to the traffic circle which exists there. Second part is there already an existing sidewalk from the entrance to Riverside and down to the bridge? Because I just can't remember. I don't think there is. And so what happens to that link? Thank you.
Answer to the first question is, we did consider that. Peter Ohms is on the line. I know I reached out to him last time about doing just a bicycle crossing of 29, and I can't get support from the traffic section to actually provide the time for the vehicle, for the bicyclist to make that crossing separate from the regular signal. So we didn't include any of those features with this project. I can't remember either if there's a sidewalk that runs from the end of Seminole Lane out to the bridge over the Ravenna either. So I know we had discussed it early on about actually looking at, because when we closed the left turn lane at Rio Mills Road and eliminated that movement, there was some discussion about possibly shifting the traffic over to accommodate a wider facility that could accommodate bikes and pedestrians across the bridge. But we didn't, at this time, we don't have enough time to actually develop all that improvements and put the cost estimate together for those types of things to be competitive. And we wanted to, if we can get this first phase done, then we can come back and do that as another phase.
Okay, so we have a few more comments, and I want to make sure we get to some of the other projects and we have enough time for discussion with those. So let's see. Debbie Weber says, and I'm sorry about your names. The screen is really small for me to read, so it's hard to make them out. But the question is, connecting to Berkmar from 29 seems to make more sense than creating a path along 29 that ends too soon. Okay, that's a kind of a comment. So we'll record that under the comments. And we're gonna move on to the next project, which is the Route 29 Frays Mill Burnley Station intersection improvements.
Okay, this was a project that was identified, this is identified as a safety need due to the number of injury crashes that occur at this location. Last round of Smart Scale 2 years ago, we submitted this project for funding and it wasn't selected. And we were just evaluating it for submission a second round. Basically what it does, it takes the existing 8-phase signal, 4-way intersection, and makes it 2-phase signal with right turns and U-turns for the side street. It actually improves the level of service for all of the movements at the intersection and preserves the flow of traffic on 29 so that it can accommodate future traffic without having to go through expensive widening project, which I don't know how we would fund. So that's basically what this does. All of the crossovers are signalized in this for this project. So when you come up to one of those approaches, you're going to stop from like Burley Station, you want to go straight through or you want to make a left, you would stop when the light turns, you would make the right, get over in the left lane, and go up to the U-turn crossover, and that's about 900 feet away. So it's, if you're familiar with the area, it's about halfway to where the Albemarle County sign is in the middle of the median. So it's about halfway there. And then you would go there and wait for the light to trip, and then you would make the U-turn and proceed south, either make the right onto Frays Mill or proceed south toward Charlottesville. Same way with Frays Mill. You come up to the signal, make the right when the light turns, then go down to the left turn, U-turn bay, and then make the U-turn when that signal trips, and then you would proceed north or turn on to Burnley Station Road. We had a question come up about bike and pedestrian. Currently, there aren't any pedestrian facilities out here, and we wouldn't want to encourage pedestrians out here anyway, because there's no facilities, there's not really any place for them to go. For bicyclists, I know that 641 is identified as a share the road facility. And I actually brought this up today to my folks in the district to see how we could accommodate the bicyclists. And the way the concept is designed, there is in the center of the splitter island that's in the median, right at the intersection, there'll be a 6-foot wide space. So you could make a multi-stage crossing of the intersection and go straight through. So that would not be a problem for this concept. And we will add the appropriate signage for that so that can be accommodated. Like I said, from a operations standpoint and a safety standpoint, we're looking to significantly reduce the crashes at this location by somewhere around 60%. And the operations would improve. Looking at the data, it looks like it'll be in the future, we could see a 50% reduction in the delay at this intersection with this improvement.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm going to open it up to questions, and we have a question from Ann Malik. We're going to unmute you, Ann. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So 50% delay reduction for whom? Because I thought the whole point was to get rid of the light. And if I understood you correctly, there's still going to be a light there. So if you would please describe that operation again so that idiots like me can understand this. If there isn't a light, then the Burnley Station people can't get out and get to the left lane fast enough, especially if they're pulling a tractor on a trailer or cattle trailer or something like that. The fire engines coming from Stony Point are going to have a very difficult time getting out and crossing over, or the Station 12 fire engines coming out of an activity and then trying to get home again. So I have grave concerns, and basically I don't understand how in the world this makes any improvement. Thank you. Okay.
Basically, we're running at a level service F in the AM and the PM peak periods right now for this intersection. And in the future, it's just going to get worse. With the R-cut, even with the signalization, right now, the signal, it's an 8-phase signal. So every one of these approaches and movements has its own signal phase. Well, what the R-cut does, it takes those that 8 phases and spreads it out. So you only have 2-phase signals. Where you're only stopping one movement at a time going through the intersection. The other times the 29 movements travel freely through the corridor, except when you have to service one of either the left turn or the U-turn movement. And that's where it gets where you see the improvements. The other thing it does is it segregates out the northbound direction from the southbound direction. So you're not having to stop both directions at the same time, which provides a significant improvement for operations in either direction. So that from an operational standpoint, it's much more, even with signals, it still operates at a much better rate than what it would be in its current situation. And we don't want to totally eliminate the access points to right in, right out, because then those folks wouldn't be able to even get out during some times during the day, even to make the right-hand turn. So we basically, we're looking at signalizing this intersection. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, I have a lot of data. I can provide more data if you need be. And there's also a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if you can switch over to that one. That provides a little bit more data.
No, we can't. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now during the slides, but people can look at the PowerPoint presentation. It's on the website that you use to register. There's a details page that lists the workshop times and projects. And if you look under the Route 29 Fraze Mill Burnley Station Intersection Improvement Project, there is a link now that says RCUT presentation, and that goes over how RCUTs work. So we have a few more comments and questions. Jim Grimes's comment, and I think Chuck may have just answered this. We'll record all of these comments for the planners to review later too. If one is on Route 29, either north or south, it appears you have to pass through 2 lights now as opposed to 1. To Ann's point, how is this better? So I think Chuck covered that. And the next one is from Neil Williamson. Considering this is less than a mile from Greene County line, have they been consulted, understanding that they are not part of the MPO?
We had a discussion about that. I haven't actually talked to the board. I know that they're proposing a super street, which is basically unsignalized RCUTs up at just south of 33 intersection, where they're at Carpenter's Mill Road. They've got an application in for 2 of these type of intersections at that location. So, but I haven't reached out to them directly and shown them this sketch.
Okay, thanks. So Peter Krebs has a comment about the 29 shared use path that may be adding an underpass a la Free Bridge at Bridge to get people across 29 and over to Berkmar. We will add that to the 29 shared use path comments. Peter Olms has provided us with a link for the changes. Tara Winowski is asking if there's data available to the public where we can see the number of accidents that occur. We live on Burnley Station and see issues with people not stopping in time on 29 because they're traveling quickly and can't brake in time for the light, but don't see it frequently.
Yes, there is data available. Let me see if I can. I know that was part of the application package. There's currently 34 crashes that have occurred there in the last 5-year period. 28 of them were rear-end collisions, which occurred on 29, either in the northbound or southbound direction. 9 of the crashes were injury crashes. And those break down. There were 2 angle injury crashes, 5 rear-end injury crashes, and 2 run-off-the-road injury crashes. Like I said, the prevailing crash maneuver is the rear end for either northbound or southbound on 29 due to the signal. And the primary reason for that is the signal has to time has to stop traffic for so long that the queues are backing up significantly. With the 2-phase signal, you won't experience those long queues, so that there's less chances of those rear-end collisions happening because you're not stopping the traffic for that long a period of time at any one of the signals, either northbound or southbound.
Okay, so then we have another comment is that it would be helpful to have some animation on the slide to show how traffic would move. And Ann also is saying that animation would be good. I think that because these are so preliminary, there hasn't been any animation done at this point. Oh, okay. So we have a question from Jim Grimes. We're going to unmute your line, Jim, so we can hear you now. Go.
I would like to know whether intelligent traffic lights have been considered by VDOT in general, but also for this intersection. You know, the traffic flow through this intersection doesn't seem that bad to me, and I go through it every day. The problem is that the light will change just based on time. But there are huge natural holes in the traffic where cross traffic just sits there. Nobody's using the intersection. And I would like to know whether a vision system has ever been considered. I do know there's a House bill to try to fund at the federal level a more intelligent traffic lights in intersections. I think that's primarily for energy savings, but I wonder whether it could work here.
We have some of them in the district. I'm not sure about this location, how it's incorporated into the system. So I can't answer your question. We can try to get you some more information about that. But that's not, I mean, like I said, I don't really know to answer that question.
The other thing I'd just like to point out is I researched this R-cut. The concept came about in the 80s and the first implementations were in the early 90s. So I just feel like there's got to be a better solution in this day and age.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions? Sandy, are there any other questions in the Q&A area? Okay, it looks like there are not.
You're good.
Okay, thanks. And like I said, we're still going to take comments on all of these projects via email and the website. So we're going to move on to the next project, the 5th Street Hub and Trails. And Jessica Hirsch-Ballering is the transportation planner with TJPDC, is going to cover these next two projects.
Thanks, Lucinda. Nick, were you going to give me the screen?
Just ask for me to advance the slides, and I'll do that for you.
Okay. So this is our tentative design plan for 5th Street Hub and Trails. It's tentative because we are working with Chuck and the engineers at VDOT to identify which of these component parts are actually feasible from a construction and engineering standpoint. So we are certain that what we submit for our final application in August will look probably a lot more like the red lines you're seeing on the screen and not that gray line, but I'll talk about all of it. So the purpose of this project was to improve bike and pedestrian access to the newer commercial development in this area while allowing bikes and pedestrians to bypass the high traffic, high speeds on 5th Street. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the new commercial development. It's just a big open spot. However, some commercial development has already been built there. The trail, the shared use path would start there, heading north to cross Moores Creek. There is an existing bridge there. However, that bridge does not meet transportation standards, so it would have to be widened as part of this project. The path would continue along the west side of Moores Creek up to 5th Street Station Parkway, where there would be a mid-block crossing. The mid-block crossing would be at grade or potentially be at the top of like a speed table to ensure better safety for all road users. So you can also see this gray line on here. This was just an idea that some of our bike and ped planners came up with to go underneath the bridge portion of 5th Street Station Parkway and then have people loop back to the sidewalk on the north side of 5th Street Station Parkway so that they could use, whether you go under the bridge or whether you use the mid-block crossing, you could then use the sidewalk that's on the north side of 5th Street Station Parkway, cross the at the existing crosswalk to cross Wegmans Way, and then use an existing sidewalk to go up to 5th Street Station. However, the information from VDOT is that the under the bridge portion is not feasible from an engineering standpoint. So that is a big component that had been a very expensive component that we are pretty much taking off the table. So that's going to dramatically reduce our estimated project costs. Another portion of the project would include a crossing of Moores Creek just north of the fork. And that would require the addition of a brand new bridge. And then it would use a series of switchbacks, not necessarily drawn to scale there, to get up the hill and allow users to access the street station. So next slide. So as I said, the cost estimate should, especially on the construction portion, look quite a bit lower once we remove our estimates for that under the bridge portion. And any outstanding concerns, things that we've already heard are just that people are already using this space. They have some primitive or more rustic trails already in existence there. They're not up to transportation standards. When we put in, if we are to put in these transportation standard shared use paths, there would be some interruption to the use of those existing trails. And that's it for this project. Any questions?
So Jessica, there's a question in the Q&A field from Roger Shidzik-Dance. How will this connect with the path parallel to Biscuit Run Creek running under 64?
So the 5th Street Hub project is really the beginning of an overarching vision to increase bike and pedestrian access in this area. So let's see. The path parallel to Biscuit Run Creek running under I-64. I think that there would be some sort of like primitive connection with that existing trail, with the intention of, you know, potentially seeing that turned into a transportation standard trail sometime in the future. Chuck, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, that was the intent, especially on the east side of Biscuit Run. There's the old roadway that runs down through there, and we're going to be crossing it. And so that would act as the existing connection. On the west side of Biscuit Run, we're going to have to probably have where the old road comes out and the old bridge is there, you're going to have that connection back to the commercial area on the west side. So those connections will be there. They just won't be of the standard ADA compliant trail that this one would be. In addition, especially with the switchbacks that Jessica was talking about, we'll probably have to do some small retaining walls and possibly include some handrail and some other features along that to actually make it work and meet the requirements. Because ADA is hold you to a 5% grade for the whole length of the facility maximum. So we've got to meet those requirements.
Thanks. So there's some comments in the Q&A from Ann Malik. Please separate the cost elements, especially the second bridge and the steep switchback trail. And then another one from Ann Malik. Are there already bike lanes? There are already bike lanes in the shopping center.
The only comment I'd like to add, there may be bike lanes in the existing shopping center. I should mention that shared use paths are not a replacement for those things. They're in addition to shared use paths appeal to a different variety of different type of user, people of all ages and abilities, as opposed to a bike lane, which might appeal to a narrower set. So this increases access for all types of people.
Okay, and then another question, won't a mid-block crossing there create a huge conflict with cars in an area that is already very tight and congested? So
yes, that's a concern, and that's why there's these two, it almost looks like two separate paths that we've created here. So there is concern from a lot of different people about that mid-block crossing. And that was the intention of creating this sort of switchback piece. It would give us an alternative to that, but still give people the access to the shopping at Fifth Street Station that they're looking for.
Thanks. So we're almost at the end of our time tonight, but we're going to stay a little bit longer to cover the last project, which is the Route 20 shared use path.
Great. Okay, so this is the initial design for our Route 20 shared use path. It begins where at Monticello and Druid Avenue, which is where the city of Charlottesville's bike lanes and sidewalks will end. And this project will extend those bike lanes and sidewalks from there down to Quarry Road, where there will be some sort of crossing that allows people to access the shared use path, which would be built in the median. The shared use path would be 10 feet wide per transportation standards for a bidirectional shared use path. Ideally, the path will have an 8-foot buffer or some sort of vertical separating element to separate the shared use path from the motor vehicle travel lane. The shared use path would end at Dairy Barn Road, where there would be some adjustments to the existing signalized crossing to allow for access to the west to Pvcc and to the east to the Saunders Monticello trailhead. Next slide. Let's see, the cost estimates are still very preliminary, but the purpose of this project was to address pedestrian and bicycle access to educational and recreational opportunities. Outstanding concerns. We've definitely had quite a few communications from some very passionate folks about the memorial trees that are planted in the Route 20 median and how this project would impact them. So first, I just want to say that I really respect your passion and I really respect the project. And what we want to do as we move forward with this particular project is to include someone from the Tree Commission in our conversations. We want someone who has that technical scientific background to help us answer questions about how different project components could impact the trees to make sure that we keep the trees healthy. And I think that we can end up at a very mutually beneficial solution, because a shared use path is just made better by plenty of trees that provide shade and get at that vertical element of separation from motor vehicle traffic to make it a much more pleasant experience so that people can have this access by biking and walking.
Thanks, Jessica. We're going to open it up to questions. Okay, so there's a question from Bill Emery. There was a BP 24 on the 2040 long range transportation plan, a bike ped Ravenna River crossing. In the current 2045 long range transportation plan is a BP 80, the bike ped crossing at Ravenna Riverview Park that would help a lot of people who need help. The BP 80 is a tier 1 project. How did the tier 2 Route 20 median SUP break into the line ahead of the Ravenna crossing? Who decides to bring forward what smart scale funding, CTAC, MPO policy, tech committee? Are there minutes available so we can be aware of the reasoning? And I think that Sandy is going to help us with that question. This is kind of more of a policy question.
Actually, Sandy, if it's okay, I think I've got this one.
Okay.
These many questions. Great questions. First, I'll say that the bike ped crossing at Riverview Park is something that is currently, well, the planning for it is currently in process. So we've been working with Chuck and the folks at VDOT to do a feasibility study for what a crossing over the Ravenna would look like from the park area. We are intending to apply for smart scale funding for that project in the future. But the feasibility study was not ready for us to do that this year. So the other question is, how do we decide which projects are applying? At least for the bike ped projects, the ones that we decided that were going to be investigated by VDOT as part of a feasibility study that was determined by the Bike and Pedestrian Coordination Committee, which is hosted by the MPO. And there's representation on that committee from the City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, UVA, and a couple of other organizations. Like we've had Pvcc and the folks from Monticello also join us at those meetings.
Thanks,
And we
thanks.
don't, sorry, I was just going to add, we don't keep minutes for those particular meetings, but we have opened them up in the past to the public.
Thanks, Jessica. The meetings are on our website, the MPO website, and they are open to the public. There's a question from Robert and Martha Orden. We are concerned about the impact on the trees, which were planted with many hours of volunteer labor. They're still young, and we believe they will not survive with a 10-foot path there. Also, the median seems like a very exposed and risky place for bikes or pedestrian path.
Yeah, so that is why I definitely understand your concern about the young trees and all of the effort that went into putting them there. That is why we want to make sure that we have someone with that scientific tree knowledge to help us figure out how to move forward with this project. I also understand talking about the median as feeling like a very exposed place. However, out of all the possible options in the area, the VDOT consultants came up with the median as the safest place to put it in order to get any access at all to these vital educational and recreational opportunities.
The next question is from Ann Malik, and she wants to know, when will the designs for the stream crossing by Pvcc be available?
As we move forward with the design, you're seeing what we have so far, or Anne, I know you were at our other webinar that we hosted with PEC about this project in particular, where there are even more detailed drawings. That's the most detailed design we have at this time, and we'll continue to move forward, potentially with more stakeholder support.
The next question is from John Lewis. How can the bike ped community communicate their support for these bike ped initiatives?
Email us. We would love to hear from you, and tell your friends to email us as well.
And the next question is from Darren Pace. I know it would be more expensive, but is there a possibility to have a path on the side of 20 instead of in the median? Should the project be delayed until those funds are obtained?
So this was investigated by VDOT consultants as part of the feasibility study. They particularly compared the shared use path running through the median to a shared use path on either side of Route 20. Neither of those latter two options on either side of Route 20 were considered safe. They had to cross too many uncontrolled on and off ramps and just really didn't meet the safety standards that we were looking for with the design they were creating.
Okay, we have a few more questions. I'm going to prioritize the ones that are related to this project. Have you explored going through the Blue Ridge Sanitarium property? I'm on the tree commission and very concerned about saving the trees. And this question is from Peggy Van Ayers.
I don't think that that was something that was considered by the consultants doing the feasibility study. I think we'll hand that off to Chuck and ask him to see if VDOT can take a closer look at the feasibility of a route like that. Thank you for the suggestion.
The next question is from Bill Emery. Have you considered the Woolen Mills Willow Tree Site passage through there with the proffered pedestrian bridge?
Again, that wasn't included in the feasibility study that was already conducted. I'm going to again pass it off to Chuck and the VDOT folks, and yeah, see if we can learn more.
Okay, thanks. And Anne has a comment saying the meetings have not been widely advertised, and I'm not sure which meetings haven't been advertised.
Just taking a guess, if Anne is referring to the Bike and Pedestrian Coordination Committees, that is because those had previously been internal meetings with staff only, and only in like maybe the month or two prior to kind of everything shutting down for the public health emergency did we start inviting members of the public, and we will, once we resume those meetings for the public, we'll make sure that those meetings are better advertised.
Thanks. Bill Emery comments that time to hold up on Route 20 median, conditions on the ground have changed. And the next question, I don't know if this is a question or a comment. Robin Haynes, there are a number of people who know about trees who believe that there is no way to modify a plan to make the path work without killing these trees. An expert may not find a way to compromise so that your median location will work for a 10-foot trail. The next comment is from Peter Krebs. The Blue Ridge Hospital route is another way of expressing East Side route, and it was considered. A tunnel under 64 on the far side of the hospital is still in long-range plans, but that's very long range. And then Ann's comment, the study meetings where people were supposed to provide comment. Okay. So I think that's it for our questions. We're a little bit over on our meeting. And as I said in the beginning, can you switch to the last slide? We're going to wrap up the meeting, but there will be opportunities for people to comment all through the rest of this month. I'd like to thank Nick for running our meeting and our presenters, Chuck and Jessica, as well as all of you for joining us tonight and sharing your questions and concerns with us. We encourage you to submit your comments using the comment feature on the Charlottesville Albemarle MPO website. At the bottom of each project description page, there will be a section for comments. I'll be moderating those comments, so they will be posted after I review them. You can also email your comments on the TJPDC projects to Sandy Shackelford at shackelford@tjpdc.org. The emails and contacts are on the website and also on the slide here. And please send me your comments on the MPO projects at lshannon@tjpdc.org. The public comment period will be open until the end of May. And that's all I have. I'm not sure, like, can we go in a presenter's room?